So this case study relates to medical research rather than healthcare treatments. But again, it's a very important example because in order to be a participant in a medical research trial, you are making a major decision about your own body. And you need to sign a consent form, which means that essentially, some studies you might be taking a drug or a pill, which hasn't necessarily been tested for safety before. So this is a big decision and one that is highly controversial as to whether children or teenagers are, of the right age and of the right maturity and capacity to be able to make these decisions themselves. So this article, this scientific research study is arguing that children over the age of 14 should be able to consent to participate as human subjects of research. They say that at age 14, children are generally ought to be recognised as independent agents who are capable of making all of their healthcare decisions, including the decision to participate as a research subject, without the threat of any personal veto. So this is a really interesting quote that I think would be great to bring into the essay question, because it's specifically talking about children at the age of 14, and these researchers are arguing that actually at age 14, children should be able to make all of their healthcare decisions independently of input from their parents or anyone else. The real reason for the regulatory assent requirement for these children, assent being you need to get permission from your parents, is that the legal rule in every state and again this is in the US by the way, so that's worth noting, not in the UK this time. The legal rule in every state that gives the authority to consent to parents of teenagers under 18 does not reflect the real decision-making capabilities of those young adults. So what they're arguing here is that young teenagers' decision-making capabilities are just as good as those of adults, but just because they're a bit younger, they're not treated with the same sort of respect to make those decisions by themselves and have the independence to make those decisions because of their younger age. Again, I'm sorry that this video is cutting off a little bit of the quote, but I will share the slides with you after the lesson so you'll be able to see the quote in full. I've also provided a link to the study here so you can read it in full as well. The proper way to address this issue, the researchers argue, is to recognise the legal authority of those over 14 to take all of their own kind of healthcare decisions, including the decision to participate as a human subject in any kind of research. Maturity and the ability to make decisions do not suddenly appear on a child's 18th birthday. Moral and emotional development are a gradual process. So basically what they're arguing here is, and they've cited two researchers called Wendler and Shah, is that although in a lot of countries in the world the age of 18 is recognised as the legal age someone becomes an adult, that doesn't mean that suddenly when you turn 18 you have this newfounded maturity or emotional intelligence or just general intelligence or competence in making decisions. Rather, adolescent development starting from the age of around 12 or 11 up to the age of your early adulthood, as we discussed in our last lesson, is a gradual process of the development of those abilities, rather than by the age of 18 those abilities are suddenly just appearing or developed fully. So this is a case study on shared decision making, which is a sort of alternative to the binary yes-no. So one could argue that yes, 14-year-olds should be able to make decisions around their own bodies, independent of their parents. You could argue no, 14-year-olds should not be trusted to make decisions around their own bodies. Or you could argue somewhere in the middle, which is what this is saying. So you could have a shared decision-making model where both the teenager of age 14 and their parents come together, and maybe they come together with a healthcare professional and they share that decision-making process and come to an agreement. So it's a sort of compromise and a middle ground that I think would be interesting to explore in the essay. And I've shared the link here to one of the strategies for shared decision making that is used in practice in healthcare settings. So these involve, and this is advice for a practitioner, this is advice for a healthcare practitioner rather than advice for a teenager or a parent, so bear that in mind. but it's interesting. So there are different steps to this shared decision-making model, and these include, discussing with the adolescent, obviously the decision that's being made, recommending the appropriate course of action, acknowledging emotions and allowing sufficient time for decisions to be made. And then it sort of gives some examples of when shared decision making might become difficult. So, if a parent and the adolescent have very different views, or if a parent is completely against the treatment but the adolescent really wants the treatment. So shared decision making is a really interesting case study.